You hear that? That's the sound of the Pac-12. They still have a pulse when it comes to the college football playoffs, believe it or not. Holding on by a thread, and that thread, the Spartans keeping those chances alive. USC able to overcome the loss of Travis Dye over the weekend, but able to roll past Colorado 55-17 thanks to Caleb Williams, QB1 accounting for 5 total touchdowns as the Trojans improved to 9-1. Others not so lucky on Saturday. Washington snapped Oregon's 8-game win streak with a 37-34 victory, handing the Ducks their second loss of the season. Arizona with the biggest upset over the weekend against UCLA, snapping their 8-game road losing streak with a 34-28 stunner. The only other ranked team that actually did their job, Utah, making it easy over Stanford at home, 42-7, as they improved to 8-2. All right, no life support from my guy Jerry Palm checking in to give us the skinny here when it comes to that conference. And Jerry, the Trojans sitting comfortable at the top of the Pac-12. Based on what you've seen, though, is it USC or bust when it comes to the CFP?
Oh, definitely. They're the only one-loss team left. You're not going to have a 2-loss team in the college football playoff unless you have an unusual circumstance. Like, for example, LSU beats Georgia to win the SEC. That's not going to work for the Pac-12 this year. That's the last team left that has a path to the college football playoff from the league. And their schedule has been a little soft because they don't get Washington or Oregon in the regular season, but it's picking up now. They have UCLA and Notre Dame left on the regular season, and then a Pac-12 championship game against another good opponent. So they're going to get tested here these last few weeks, and if they can get to 12-1, they will definitely be part of the conversation.
UCLA, you see that there, their next game on the 19th, number 12 Bruins, and then ending the season with Notre Dame, who's been getting hot lately, the weekend of Thanksgiving. We have 4 teams sitting at 10-0 so far, all in the top 4. If you look at the AP, is TCU, one of those teams, the Big 12 there, surviving Texas this weekend, 17-10. Safe to say, though, the Horned Frogs have made a case for you this past weekend.
Well, didn't have to make a case for me. I've been on board with them for at least a few weeks, but this was the game I actually projected them to lose, and then they won that. So now, and they won it in a way that was different than the rest of their games. I mean, the rest of their games have been relatively high scoring, still a lot of close games in there, but this was a defensive battle, and TCU still found a way to win. So I think that was pretty impressive. I don't think they're going to jump Michigan because Michigan is still dominating tomato cans in the Big Ten, but the committee does like dominance, and that's what's holding TCU back. But if TCU gets to 13-0 or maybe even still 12-1 as a champion, they would have a shot for the college football playoff.
All right, we'll see what happens. Of course, Baylor and Iowa State there to round out their regular season before we even get to the Big 12 championship team when it comes to that. Tennessee responding after their loss to Georgia over Mizzou here. Is for them, for the Volunteers, is it just a waiting game to see if somebody in the top loses so they can jump in?
Yeah, well, somebody in the top will lose because Ohio State and Michigan are going to play each other. But the most important thing for Tennessee is Georgia to be undefeated. Because if Georgia loses, Tennessee has no shot. They'll be, at best, the third-ranked team in the SEC. There aren't going to be 3 SEC teams in the playoffs, so they need Georgia to be undefeated. It would help to have a bunch of 12-1 champions to be compared with. I don't think they would lose out to an 11-1 Big Ten team, but you never know, I suppose. Ohio State would be more competitive with Tennessee than Michigan, I think. But 12-1, USC, 12-1. ACC champion, those are teams that Tennessee needs to worry about as long as Georgia remains undefeated.
So a lot of pieces there if the Volunteers want to get in. At the end of the night, though, Jerry, of course, we're going to have the latest edition out. What do you expect the biggest message of the day will be later tonight from the committee?
Well, I don't know what message they're going to send. They don't really talk about sending messages. The message so far this season that has been consistent is that strength of schedule is not as important as dominating your schedule. And as long as, they're consistent with that, then, I don't think we're going to learn too much in terms of criteria. But the thing that really interests me is how are they going to rank the 4 Pac-12 teams that are now sitting there with 2 losses? Because there are a lot of similarities, and I don't know how they're going to sort those teams out, but it does kind of matter for some of the other bowl games, if not the college football playoff.
Jerry, give me your top 4, maybe 5 and 6, what we might see tonight, your projections.
Well, I think you're going to see, the teams that were in the top 5 last week remain the same. Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, and then Tennessee. And then number 6 should be LSU moving up into Oregon's spot. because they can't really go any higher than Tennessee because Tennessee annihilated them when they played each other.
Brian Kelly was sitting pretty after all that awful dancing during the recruiting trail, looking pretty good there with LSU. Jerry Palm, appreciate it as always here, knocking it down and giving us everything when it comes to the CFP. The Cover 3 podcast, always doing the same there, talking Kansas State, Texas, Clemson, and more. Plus, upon further review, gets it rolling to recap what we saw went wrong with UCLA, along with Arizona and how that impacts the Bruin. Also, USC, can they jump in, download, and give the guys a follow?
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.